Hello, welcome to the Creativity Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Cameron Smith. I feel like I don't need to say that after a certain point, but I just said it, so we're going to leave that in. My guest today is my friend Tory Silinski. She is a photographer and videographer, and also an artist of several different varieties. We'll get into that. Before we get into the questions and conversation, as usual, I don't have any sponsors, but I am trying to get some, so I'm making ads for free, just throwing them out there and seeing who bites. I've been trying bigger businesses so far, so I'm going to try to get a little more local with this one. This is, oh, here we go. Let's get into it. This episode is brought to you by Perry's Emporium with a special message from Alan Perry himself. If you don't buy my rings, then fuck you. All right, now let's get into it.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I mean...
Do you need to do that over again?
No.
Okay.
Look.
Okay.
Everyone laughs at these fucking ads, and no advertiser's going to take me, no company's going to take my ad seriously, but whatever. I guess the laughing is just unavoidable.
Oh, no.
It's okay.
I might buy a ring. Fuck you. Oh, shit. That's
Yeah.
a serious ring that I should get. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just make sure when you're talking, it's like right into the mic rather than like off to the side. That's my only request so far.
Yeah. Better.
Yeah, that's better.
Cool.
Okay. So you have a media production company. Was that how you would call it? Or
Yeah.
would you call yourself a freelancer, or how would you describe?
I guess more freelancer because TAS Visuals is my initials, so that's more...
Is that how you
freelancing for
say
me.
your brand? Like you spell it out, TAS Visuals?
Yeah, or people say TAS. Or
Yeah, that's how I've always said it in my head.
That's okay.
TAS Visuals.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah. I have a friend who just calls me Taz sometimes, and I'm like,
Yeah.
just different.
You seem like your nickname could be Taz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Pergs. Pergs is a nickname I acquired here.
Where'd Pergs come from?
From just Instagram. I go by Purgatory. So some of my friends home were just like Purgatory, ex-Purgatory, and just kind of like make fun of it. And then I was working at Front Street Brewery, and one of the dude who's the kitchen manager now started calling me Pergs, and then he just blessed me with a beautiful nickname, Pergs.
Right. So Pergs is Purgatory short.
Yeah.
But what led you to go to select Purgatory as a name? I guess I now see Tory is in the name.
Tory's in Purgatory, but also I think like my like upbringing of growing up Catholic, there's a huge thing with heaven and hell, and just my thoughts about it of kind of us all being on earth in a purgatory because you make your own heaven or hell.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. So I mean, this might be an immediately deep place to go into conversation, but do you also because the way I see heaven and hell are less like they're conceptually places you go when you die, but I think more importantly, they're psychological states. Is that kind of what you're saying, like how you feel about those terms?
Totally.
Yeah. And you create that for yourself, like with the story that you have in your head.
Yeah, totally. And I guess that's kind of like every day that you can be in your own heaven or hell. It's just the way you perceive it, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of people with a lot of the same like objective points in their life, but like that subjective story they tell is the difference between seeing it as a heaven or hell. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
So back to the photography and video thing. Is there one of those that you kind of prefer? Like you love doing photos more than you do videos, or other way around? Or is it just all the same to you?
Kind of all the same sometimes, but I love both because they can be one of the same. I think when it gets down to editing, sometimes it's a bit more fun to edit photos just because I can turn on like a podcast to listen to, or a show or music sometimes when I have to edit video, it's not the same experience because you have to obviously focus to edit video. But I think they're both satisfying to have the whole process from like shooting and editing.
Is there part of the process that you enjoy the most? Like, do you love the shooting and not like the editing so much, or is it just like every bit of it?
I think I've always loved every bit of it, but lately I think I prefer just the shooting. And I think it depends what the project is, because if I'm doing like my vlogs or something, that I love the shooting process, but I'm gonna love the editing process because I get to see it come together and form it in the way that I want it. But with, I think, general work, I'm starting to just prefer the shooting portion. Yeah. I definitely have seen that for myself with like doing work for clients. I have to kind of break down, particularly the post-production, the editing part, into like chunks where it's like I can maybe only handle doing a handful of hours at a time or per day. And it usually takes me a bit of like getting motivated to sit down and give those hours, where like, I mean, just the first couple episodes I've done of this, I've exported the footage onto imported the footage onto my computer, and then I've sat down for like 12 hours straight and just cranked out the whole edit. And I mean, like, I miss those days where like I'm mostly doing my own thing. And sometimes I get scared that level of being able to be motivated and sit down for an unhealthy amount of hours and just get a thing done. Sometimes I fear that ability has left me at many points in my life, but then I'm surprised to find that like, oh no, it's still here. It's just I wasn't very motivated by what I was doing. That's why I couldn't do it uninterrupted for so long. Definitely. And I feel like my motivation sways sometimes because I'll work on something and I'll be really into it, and then as time progresses I kind of neglect things. I have a couple projects that I've kind of neglected that I'm just kind of like trying to build up the motivation to do. Or I guess like I'll intentionally, it took like years I guess to get more disciplined into sitting down to edit and know that I'm gonna do this and like look at that as like my 9 to 5 or whatever. But there's still times where I'll sit down and I'll be like, all right, I'm gonna work on this, and I'm like, but maybe this takes priority right now, and it just keeps getting pushed back. Definitely money can play a big factor in that. Totally. And do you feel, so this is probably a good place to start that question. When did you go from taking this passion for really doing things with a camera, both the shooting and the post-production, and go from it being just a thing you're messing around with and you enjoy, to this is now like I'm an entrepreneur in this business. I'm now starting my own brand and I'm going to sell my services. When did that happen? And then when were you able to go full time with it? I guess 2014, I professionally started working. And so it took a lot of time to build that up. But my mindset about it was on the professionalism side rather than the hobby side. Right. And so you pretty much started that skill with going straight into professionalism. It wasn't a hobby that converted to a... Well, I think it was a hobby. I was in, like high school, middle school. I had done painting. And so I was really good at painting. That was like my thing throughout school. And then in high school, I did photography classes as well. And then I did videography as well. I got on like broadcasting and did... that's when I explored like editing and everything like that. And I guess like that's where in college, I first went to college for like art as like painting, drawing, and then I think I don't know when it like transitioned for me. I think I just started doing like a film minor, and then I got an internship, and then when I got the internship, that's when I switched it to see that, all right, people are making money on this, so I can do that too. Yeah. And so that, have you, since you've been doing it professionally,
have you found like an ebb and flow of like you're busy and you're good financially, and then you have these gaps of time that you actually can sort of non-stressfully dedicate to your more creative, non-financially beneficial projects, maybe ones that you're even putting money into? And is there, do you find that there's kind of, it's like hard to predict that, it's hard to manage that, or do you feel that there's times of the year where things slow down naturally? What's been your experience with that, doing it for multiple years?
I think, there is an ebb and flow of being able to dedicate more time to my creative things, and knowing that I need to kind of put my head down and work hard so then I can get back to that again. And I think a lot of people in film just generally say there's feast or famine, and that's just like the life of it. But yeah, there are times where I think now is kind of a time where I'm kind of good, but still looking for work and trying to figure all of that out. Right. But I have been able to just spontaneously do a couple creative projects. Yeah. So I think there are times when I can spontaneously just pop off a project, and there are other times where I'm trying to sit down and like plan and do a like docu-series or something that's the creative project, and knowing that I need to spend some time working to invest into that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about one particular docu-series creative project of yours. You told me a little bit about, I guess maybe a couple months ago when we were chatting. It's called Ego Ale, and you've been working on it for how long again?
I started working on it in, say 2018 or 19, maybe. I started working on it in school, and so I took it pretty seriously for a couple classes, and I wrote papers and did PowerPoints and presentations on it, and then I haven't let that go, and I've still just been planning and working on it. Ego Ale is about, for context, Ego Ale is about me exploring what ego is through different artists or different people, musicians, just because I feel like most of the time artists and musicians have to set aside their ego to channel something within themselves to produce in their work. Yeah. So there's some kind of like letting go of that, being present, or sometimes people hold on to it, and that's what drives them.
Yeah. Yeah, this concept of ego, I think it's a very potent topic of conversation. And I think the thing that I find most interesting about it is kind of this meta thing about how people perceive that word and that idea, because I feel like people's individual definitions of it vary vastly. And I know that this Ego Ale thing you kind of mentioned before, that Eckhart Tolle, his writing and ideas have really played a role in your conception of ego. Isn't that's right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, and I remember when I first read his stuff kind of around 2019, like I think I had been introduced to his stuff maybe even in college through like some of the creative writing classes. But I never really paid too much attention to what I was assigned in terms of reading, just all throughout school. And I didn't really get interested in reading myself until the end of college. But when I started taking it in on purpose, picked out his books, I think I didn't start with The Power of Now. I started with A New Earth. And yes. I remember the first like introduction of that. I was already into meditation and already into the concepts of consciousness and self and that kind of thing. But I definitely feel, even though I was familiar and had a meditation practice and felt like I had made strides in that kind of like stepping back from my ego and identifying what it is, I feel like there was an extra shift that took place just in hearing his words articulated so beautifully in that introduction of A New Earth. And the way he describes the concept of ego to me, as I understand it, which I think gave me a more clear, more functional, better idea of ego, which I don't think a lot of people think about ego this way. But it's pretty much, there is consciousness, self-awareness, and it's just the awareness and the experience in the present moment. Ego is everything else, essentially, as far as we're concerned as human beings. It is our physical form. It's all the contents of consciousness. I mean, it's ego. It not only is our thoughts and even our emotions, but it's also the physical matter which we interact with. So it's kind of like, what I find so interesting about this concept of, because a lot of people talk about this thing that you're talking about in Ego Ale, where the artist has to step back from their ego and allow their creativity to flow through, essentially get their ego out of the way to allow something to be channeled through it. I don't know if I see it that way, though, because I feel with this Eckhart Tolle definition, artists, as we're talking about creating things, we are talking about manipulating material matter and creating different forms of media and maybe physical sculptures and paintings and things. And so I don't feel like it's necessarily this total exclusion or abandonment of ego, but I do feel like it is a collaboration with ego that doesn't necessarily come from a place of ego. Like, ego's not the driver of it. And I think that's what's being talked about when it's stepping back and getting out of the way. Because you can have egoic motivations for making pieces of art, and a lot of times those pieces will fall flat and not resonate with people. But in these cases where artists will give recounts of this process, like, I don't know what happened, I just kind of like got out of the way, and like I don't feel like I was in control. There was some force moving through me. But that, I think that's the point I was trying to make. What are your thoughts on, like, do you feel like ego is completely removed from the equation, or do you feel like it's not about ego death, it's about getting your ego to cooperate and take maybe second, like, passenger seat to this higher unified self?
Yeah.
I know that was a mouthful, but
it was. What do I think about the process of letting go ego? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you could talk about, I mean, just your thoughts outside of yourself and observing other artists, or just your own experience with making art. Do you feel like it's a collaborative effort with the ego, or do you feel like it's just
collaboration with your ego, really? Or even talking about A New Earth, I think that was my first introduction to Eckhart as well, because probably in like high school in like 2009, there was this musician called Pogo, and he like sampled some of his speeches in his music. So I was like, who is this man, this philosopher man? And then in The New Earth, also talking about like your idea processes, like even just having thoughts and knowing that your thoughts are like egoic. But I think with Ego L, I think it's exploring the collaboration that you have to deal with your ego. And then even just thinking about, like, for myself in like filmmaking and photography, that you have to let it go, because you have to be present. And being present and looking through like your lens, observing the things around you, you can let go of your ego, because you're not going to have motivation sometimes. Sometimes you just need to go out in the world and just shoot, and that's when something will come to you, and it'll be just the right thing or just the right moment. And you're not always going to have those moments if you have intent behind the art of the lens sometimes. Yeah.
So I've heard you, or I feel like from following you on Twitter, I feel like there's at least one tweet where you use this term that I've used. I've never really heard other people, like, we've heard tons of people use the term flow.
Yeah.
But you put this word in front of it, perpetual flow. Do you remember a tweet where you said that?
I don't.
You don't?
Tweet so much.
No, I don't remember what it was, and I tried to search it so I could find the exact tweet, but I don't think I can search your Twitter because it's private.
Oh, okay.
So like when you search a word. So anyway, Yeah. So before we talk about perpetual flow,
Okay.
how do you conceptualize flow in this context using rhetoric that we're...
I guess like flow state,
Mhm.
like being able to access a flow state
Yeah.
of being
Yeah.
completely present with something, to kind of like disregard everything and have like a moment. Flow, I guess it takes like practice to enter the flow state as well. It has to be like a disciplined or conscious thing that you are focused on to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
Well, no. It's I want to hear what you think of this, because I think I kind of laid the groundwork with that long-winded question about ego and self and getting out of the way, to where I almost see this in terms of flow and this ego self sort of as a spectrum.
Okay. Yes.
Like, we are probably in our most maladaptive form of behavior when we're all the way on the ego side of that spectrum.
Okay.
We're maybe concerned about the details of what's going on in our life and stressed about things unnecessarily, worried and occupying our finite attention with the wrong things in the big, broader context of things. That's maybe the best way to describe being on the far end of the ego spectrum.
And like material things.
Getting in unnecessary feuds and seeing yourself as very separate from others and being obsessed with yourself in a very non-productive way.
Yeah.
Seeing people less as friends and collaborators and more as enemies and others is probably the far end of the ego spectrum.
Yeah.
So then on this far end of the self spectrum, though, I think it's almost like it's really that pure meditative state. It's like meditation in the beginning phase of it is kind of just getting on that surface level of the waves of consciousness where you're still aware of the contents of consciousness, but you're kind of stepping back from them.
Yeah.
But then the real transcendent meditative state is when all that stuff disappears and you even lose sense of your body and you're kind of just in the pure experience of just plain awareness, probably of just the blackness behind your eyes. And it might even be a deeper blackness because you probably even lose any awareness of your eyes looking at the back of your eyelids in that state. But in that state, the downside of that, I guess in the context of interacting with the world as a human being, is you really can only get there by doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So it's a place of non-action as far as we're concerned with human rhetoric and being a human being. So what I think I'm suggesting is that what the flow state is, it's not necessarily being on the complete self, non-ego end of the spectrum. It's more like striking this beautiful, perfect, natural balance between identifying with the self and not with the ego, but dancing with it. That you and the ego are perfectly dancing together and getting things done in this productive in the domain of ego, but not of the ego.
Yes. Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's like, well, with all of that and then thinking about like me trying to come back to that, just dealing with like a lot of trauma in my life is really hard to get my own ego out of the way.
Yeah.
And trying to come back to that to be more observational and non-active and non-reactive and just be able to be back into the flow state and have this sense of peace with that, of being able to dance with my ego and know that there are parts of me that it really does pop out and other parts that I'm more self-aware. And I think that's like the first step always, is being self-aware about it, because once you are, then you're able to do more conscious things than just having an ego and subconsciously just living your life with it. Yeah.
Do you have any sort of practices or physical anchors in which you kind of aim to get out of your ego? Like, do you have any type of meditation practice, or is this sort of Eckhart Tolle kind of presence, it's more just a conceptual idea which you consciously aim for to be present and as much as you can.
Yeah, I think it's like with him, it's an idea and it's something that I can always refer back to know that he is kind of like a master in this. So I can always refer back to his stuff and hear it and know that there's things to pull from it, to learn from it. Even if I've heard something or a talk or something he's done before, I can always go back to it and see it with a new perspective, depending on like where I'm at, The further you go on with your reality, the more perception you have from something that was the same. But I'm sorry, I got lost.
No, it's okay. It's kind of a confusing topic to talk about. It's really hard because the true nature of it transcends words.
Yeah.
So using words, and that's one of the beautiful things about what he said is like, one, grouping our words and language and thinking in with ego and realizing like using the ego to try to talk about this transcendent thing. I mean, it's almost like as elusive as trying to talk about a concept like God. It's just to put him into words defeats the purpose of the idea to some degree.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We can really only scratch the surface of this concept with our words.
Definitely. You were asking about grounding and meditation.
Yeah.
Grounding and meditation. For meditation, I think when I do set aside time to do meditation, I do like guided meditations for flow state. And then just regular meditations for breathing, for anxiety. But something that's like grounding to me. Do you have a grounding object? What do you ground with?
I have a meditation practice.
Okay,
I've been practicing transcendental meditation since 2017. And then I've learned a lot about various forms of mindfulness meditation.
Yeah.
And so I see my transcendental meditation as a very specific practice, which requires sitting and using a mantra and even a specific way of doing that sitting and mantra. It's a carefully constructed and not really negotiable, customizable practice. It's like an ancient Vedic practice. So it's like I don't really mess around with those rules and try to personalize that practice to me. It's just twice a day, 20 minutes at a time. That's the practice.
Yeah.
But
you're really in it. You doing it.
Yeah. But mindfulness I find to be much more free form, and I use that as supplemental meditation. And I find what Eckhart Tolle is saying to align a lot more with mindfulness ideas. And so I see that as I use that more as like an off the cushion practice, as they say, where it's just thinking about that concept of consciousness. It's just thinking about becoming present, focusing on your breath. And sometimes I might be like, if I'm in a more noisy environment or unsure of how much time I really have, or I could potentially be disrupted in my meditation. Maybe if I'm outside and not a very controlled, quiet environment, I might do a mindfulness meditation where it's just I'm going to focus on my breath for as long as I feel like it. Yeah. Maybe even just focus on these sensations and sounds around me. Might even do it with my eyes open. And sometimes, especially when you're listening to someone talk, it's really cool to catch yourself if you become distracted and you're in your own head, but then you realize I'm not paying attention. It's like focus on the words that they're saying and then use like your breath as this secondary thing that's like anchoring you in presence. So I'm
like guided meditation.
Yeah. And I've also read this book called Breath by James Nestor, which also just got me fascinated with breathing on its own outside of the context of meditation. And I made a conscious effort to slow my breathing down to like 6-second inhales, 6-second exhales, because that does amazing things physiologically, but particularly when you're feeling stressed. I've found that to be so effective. Meditation in general has been very effective with dealing with anxiety and depression for me and getting through really difficult periods of my life. There's times I don't think I would have made it through if I didn't have the practice. And I don't know what I mean by not making it through. I don't know.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. It could mean that, but it could also just mean like I wouldn't be here this. Like I might have like snapped, and I might be in like a mental institution. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I feel like I'm always on hanging on by the thinnest thread there, but I'm good, y'all. I'll be all right. But I think
you have many sides to you. You're so versatile. Seeing you like this, and then knowing that how far you can go in your comedy and stuff.
Yeah. It's jarring.
I hate
isn't it?
to say this. I almost expected to come on here and you're gonna do some like comedy shit and just like fuck with me.
Yeah, just play like fart sounds and everything. Yeah. No, I understand. I kind of find it entertaining that people have this like very common reaction to me, like I don't know what to expect from you, or like they're weary. Like when I was shooting some of the documentary I was telling you about, that like I was interviewing my film professor Carlos Case. Did you ever have him?
I actually didn't, but I know everyone is so cool with him.
Yeah.
I'm just like, dang, well, I just never had him.
Such a cool dude.
Yeah,
so glad I did.
Yeah.
But even him, like, you know, I've never done anything fucked up to him or anything like that, but even he, like, he could kind of tell he's a little nervous in the interview, and like he finally just like I thought this was gonna be like potentially some sort of ambush where you're just just gonna start talking about cum for I was like, no man, this is I'm being genuine.
You are.
I have the two sides. I have a genuine side and a quite Machiavellian side that's just disregard for all values except for humor. If it makes me laugh, then cool.
Yeah, that's the artist in you, really.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, back to the meditation question. So yes, I have a grounding practice. It's a specific form of meditation, and then I would say the mindfulness and the breathing is sort of supplemental, and it's more like a toolkit to use in between the sort of stringent practice. Yeah, definitely.
I like breathing exercises as far as when you are doing the guided meditation. It is like the person talking, guiding you through it, that you always come back to. But then the breathing, I think I like the breathing practices where you're like breathing in and then you catch yourself on that small moment. That's where I like to focus on, that small moment between the breaths.
That 1 second pause in between.
Or like your body's just naturally, like you're not even breathing out, but you're naturally like already breathing out because that's just your body.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of really interesting ideas of just how to like conceptualize the breath and like mindfulness sort of ideology. The other thing about the breathing too is not just the slowing down the breath, but doing it exclusively through the nose, like as much as outside of things like exercise, like heavy exercise where you like have to breathe through your mouth at certain points.
Different nostril sides for breathing too.
Yeah, I've heard of that too. There was one too that was like really good for quelling congestion, where it was something like I think it was like going through between nostrils, or it was like holding your nostrils and then like shaking your head and tilting it up. And then but for some reason I think it's like it shakes around carbon atoms in your sinuses and then it clears things up. I've used it. It works, but I can't remember the exact details of the method. It's been a while. I think with meditation also,
growing up living with strict parents, it wasn't much to do sometimes, so I would do astral projection meditations, and I think that was maybe I guess one of my introductions to guided meditation. Astral projection is real cool. Dreaming is real cool.
I had a brief phase in 2018 where, I've lucid dreamt by accident a number of times in my life. But I was just fascinated. I want to get a lucid dream book, or I think I got multiple, but there's one called the Lucid Dreamer's Field Guide, I think is what it's called. And I read that, and I mean, just reading a book about it is part of the process, because it occupies your conscious mind during the day with something like lucid dreaming, and then it gives you tips like anchors to start programming your unconscious and subconscious mind when it's dreaming to look for these things that would signal to you. So I became someone who could lucid dream almost like on a nightly basis, or at least my dream recall, because I started doing a dream journal, just expanded insane. Like I went from being able to maybe remember like a sentence or two worth of details of the dream to multiple pages, paragraphs of detail, and I fell off and stopped doing it. But Probably because it was like taking me a whole 30 minutes to an hour to write as soon as I woke up.
That's good to do though.
Yeah, well, I do feel like it brought some sort of like really psychological benefit to it, where I just felt much more aligned and in tune with myself and my reality. And it's weird because it doesn't really make logical sense.
Yeah.
But it seems to be some sort of unconscious process going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I realize I'm dreaming, I like to, like when I'm in a dream, I like to fly.
Yeah.
So I'll be like, oh, this is a dream. Oh, I could fly. Okay, let's go. Like, let's get out of here.
Yeah, I remember, I think my first time flying, it was in that bout of starting to lucid dream and having dream recall. But like I was in a loft apartment I was living in the dream, and I wasn't living there at the time that I had the dream, but it was like one from a year or two prior. And I just started like levitating in it, and then I went up with this, and then I realized like, oh, I can like shoot up, like, and then I just did that. There was something else here too about what did you just say? It might have triggered the thought.
When you realize you're dreaming,
the flying.
Yeah.
Realize tricks. So like everyone knows the looking at a time or a watch trick, right? You look, it's a time, and then you look away, you look again, and and then you have like 10 fingers on one hand. Yeah. But one of my favorite tricks that I found the most effective was holding your nose.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
because if you hold your nose in a dream, you can still breathe through your nose perfectly. Yeah. Because otherwise in real life you do it, I can't breathe through my nose. But, that was one of my favorite tricks. And then there was also something in that book that said when you're starting to like lose the dream, or you're starting to lose at least your lucidity, something along the lines of that. I think it's mostly just like the dream is coming undone and it's going to blackness. Yeah. One of the ways to stop that from happening is slowing down your breathing and like trying to enter a meditative state in the dream. That was also a strange.
That's a good tip, actually. Yeah. I should think about that more. Can I tell you about a dream I had the other day?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
No, we're not doing that.
Stupid. No, just kidding. I probably had this dream just because I started picking up guitar again. My dad is a musician, so I was like, hey, can we learn this classical piece together? And then I had a dream that I was a musician and I had an acoustic guitar going on stage with two saxophone players. And then my dream came undone, like you're saying, when I just got up to go on stage. But part of me was like, thank God, because I'm not a musician. Right. But then the other part of me is like, oh, I wish I could have held on to it to see how this would have came out, you know? Yeah.
Have you ever had a dream that's like really banal? You know, of course, we have these dreams that are, you know, super fascinating and out of the ordinary, like just wouldn't make sense happening in real life. But have you ever had a dream that totally could happen in real life and it is almost totally normal, except for like just not even except for, but there's just one little detail that's significant in your waking life? Like, let's say you had a dream about having a phone call with an existing client where they told you a detail about a shoot, like, oh, we need to move the shoot to this venue. Yeah. Otherwise, the dream's completely normal. And then that just sits in your memory, and like 2 weeks later, you're talking to that client, like, are we still doing the venue switch? And they're like, what are you talking about? Like, that must have happened in a dream that you told me that, and I just switched it up. I feel like I've had little things, like, not in that particular scenario, but I think like a friend telling me something about like, oh, I got a dog, and it's like, how's your dog doing? What are you talking about? I don't have a dog. Yeah.
I feel like yes, but so slightly I can't even remember. Yeah. You know, or it's just been something that before even saying anything, I had sorted out in my head that, oh wait, that's not reality. Yeah. That was just
I think that's typically what happens.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. It is strange.
I'm trying to think of an actual time, but I don't know. Or maybe just like meeting people generally or having a conversation, or like I feel like I've had dreams where I've like met people that I haven't met before, and then when I actually meet them, then I'll like it's already played out in my head, I guess. So then there's like moments like that. But
yeah. So outside of the photography and videography, actually no, I want to stay on the particularly the videos for a second,
okay.
particularly
Yes.
the filmmaking side of things.
Yeah.
You are a documentary filmmaker in particular. Like that's,
Yeah.
you do other things. Like I've seen you got some music videos and like some ads and just kind of things of that nature that you've done. But would you say documentary is what you're most passionate about?
Totally, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
What fascinates you about documentary, like as opposed to narrative or experimental?
I mean, I think when we're talking about like ego and everything that relates to that, then like as well, documentary is something that's larger than myself that I can partake in or observe, or like the art of like time and space and community. So documentary I like because I get to connect with people, I guess, or like connect with the world around me. I like the process of documenting or like seeing spaces change. Even like going back home in Charlotte, it's changed so much that I have photos of places or videos of places that I've captured and now it doesn't exist anymore. Or memories with people. I think documentary for me is huge on like memories and spending time with people before you can't anymore.
Yeah. And even with that too, it's like, you know, you can spend time with people making a narrative film, but I think there's something about using the film medium to try to capture, with the aim to capture what's real and align with reality, to where it's like the contents of the documentary and what happens in the documentary are in tandem and like synonymous with real life. So it's capturing real life, where building something like a narrative film is more like constructing an elaborate facade. And there seems to be some sort of disassociation and disconnect with it, where I'm someone who really has made much more narrative stuff, and I love that stuff. I love building fictional characters and whatnot, and even pulling from real life to establish a story or a character. I do that often, but and I've had very few documentary projects, and I feel like the last documentary I made was 10 years ago at least, and I didn't have the appreciation for this thing I'm describing about really aiming to capture reality and people in their essence as best as you can, with them knowing that there's cameras and microphones on them. So I feel that's what we're doing right now. All this is scripted, by the way. This whole conversation, we're just reading a script. There's a teleprompter behind my head, one behind hers.
Act nervous.
So with Ego Ale, back to that, what do you feel is methods you're using to capture the truth from these creative individuals that you're featuring, while it's them knowing that they're being filmed?
I think for Ego Ale, I have like two approaches with it. One is doing a sit down and having a conversation and like discussing philosophy or their art or like what their inspiration is. And then two is us going out and doing something and being like present in the moment to kind of see that go down, to be able to capture them as the person they are in the moment without too much pressure on them. Just kind of like doing something distracting and kind of seeing how they are, like their character.
Okay. And I want to also talk about the pragmatic side to this, because it's, again, a project you've been working on for a while. But do you see a timeline which you are putting this out and sharing this with the world? Or is this something that's just completely stays up in the air for you?
I don't know. I think
what's the possibility that you abandon it and don't ever put it out?
Like, could be true too. I think it's all up in the air in a way. But when I think about it, I am trying to just focus on one person at a time. When I first wanted to do it, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to have a 30-minute series, and then in each 10 minutes I'm gonna have it be in a different city with a different person. I think maybe in the future that's the ultimate goal, but to get there I want to just kind of put out the short form of like the 7 to 10 minute vlog in a way, or like documentary, because it's like a process of documentary, like sit down, interview, B-roll, explore, and then the other part is the vlog, be in the moment, exploration of it. So I think timelines right now, I don't really have any timelines with it, or like the people I've been working with, or it's just kind of like a pick up and go. I think I've just been dealing with a lot. It is, so I haven't been able to focus on it in the way that I want to, but I'm getting back to be able to do that right now.
Well, now I'm going to circle back to this concept of perpetual flow, and also just kind of toss an idea at you, because my experience has been, I'm very much someone who has been susceptible to very negative psychological states for reasons that are arguably my own doing more than half the time, maybe. And then reasons that are completely outside of my doing, like I could not possibly control, and I'm just reacting to my reality. But either way, states of depression and anxiety and stagnation and being in a dark place where you feel like you can't be creative and you can't really be productive. I've almost always, the lesson I keep learning over and over again is that it's by any means necessary, I need to get myself into that state of flow with a project, because that is the thing that relieves me from the suffering. Always. It's just never not the case. And it might be whatever project I'm working on isn't sufficient to put me there. I'm not sufficiently motivated or in love with that project. But as soon as I excavate and find it, and then it sparks and I'm in it, I just forget. Like I forget about it. So I think like, and I understand really deep levels of being unmotivated and feeling like you can't work on the thing that you're passionate about. But I really do feel like pushing through that discomfort and that resistance and then getting into it is almost always the solution to moving past whatever it is that you're going through, because that creative flow, that experience is what's redeeming. I feel like creativity and creative action in particular is almost divinely powerful. And I think what I see flow as is that state that we can enter. I'm describing this creative action, that balance between self and ego, where you're in the self, but you're taking egoic act. You're using the self to almost puppeteer egoic action to bring creativity into physical manifestation. And I feel like in this ideology of valuing creativity in the highest, perpetual flow is like synonymous with the enlightenment state. Enlightenment, I think, typically in meditative philosophy is more like being okay with doing nothing all the time. There's no need to take egoic action. But I think in this alternative way where creativity is held in the highest rather than just pure selfless conscious awareness, then this state of perpetual flow where you're just in this beautiful state of just unaffected by life suffering, and you're just always creating, and not in an unhealthy way. You're still, even in the context of you taking care of your mental health and your physical body and the people around you, that's part of the creative experience, because you're creating your life. But I think viewing it that way always, and always being in the state of flow, that's perpetual flow. And I feel like that's the ultimate goal. That's why I was so interested that I saw you use that term, and I didn't know if you thought about it like that or anything.
I can't even remember how I used it.
Oh God damn it.
I guess with ego, it's like, how am I supposed to show up for this project right now when I can't even show up for myself? So I'm trying to get back to that, so I can show up for the project properly, but also like I am trying to push through on creative things. I think I just kind of took the route at the moment of the more like relatively immediate gratification of creativity, of like spontaneous projects where it's like, all right, I'm here. I'm just going to go drift with my friend and we're going to go do a shoot, or we're going to, I don't know, my friend has been wanting to do, for the past 2 years, we've talked about doing this like clown get up and like this backdrop and this certain type of lighting. And then I was like, hey, I'm in town, so you want to do that? So just kind of hopping around on those creative ideas instead of sitting down to plan more with Ego Ale and spend more time with my wow. Sorry, I was trying to think about like my subjects. Sorry. Just the subjects that I have. But yeah, I think
how many subjects do you have, like a bank of episodes that is maybe not editing wise, but shooting wise that you have?
Yeah.
Roughly how many?
I think right now I have like 4.
4.
Yeah.
Would that be like 3 of those would make up one episode in your mind, or you want this is more your web series format?
Yeah, web series,
like 7-minute episodes.
Yeah, on one person. Yeah. So I think I'm trying to focus it on that, to get it to be funded eventually, to have it be something a bit more longer format, to maybe even throw in a festival somewhere eventually and do that whole thing. There's one person that I do want to do that I had an opportunity to a couple years ago, but then I just didn't do it. This dude, Lyle Forever.
The Therapy Gecko. I think you told me a little bit about that. And since then I have followed him.
I love him.
Yeah, he's great.
I hit him up and he's like, I'm in DC, like come through. And then I was like, cool, let me sort my stuff out. And I never did. And now he's in LA, but I am going to Vegas in January and I'm thinking about stopping by to see him.
Yeah, you should.
On the way or on the way back. So just trying to figure that out. But more people that are like that, who for him, I admire him because he talks about the flow state a lot with what he's doing. And just other artists in general. I have a muralist that I really admire. It's a friend, and just I appreciate her for her art, but the way she approaches her art, because she does a lot of tagging.
Yeah.
And I think being able to tag is also a sense of like establishing your ego, like leaving that mark, but also being able to let it go through her other art endeavors and illustrations. And I don't know, I think it's not always about the letting go of the ego, but like you had mentioned before, like the dance you do with it.
Yeah.
Now she's doing tattoos and stuff, and like leaving your mark on people as well is something to explore with ego. Not sure exactly what to say it is, or like how to put it in words, but there's something there. I think that's kind of the hard thing with all of it, and that's why I was like, I need to like get my language up to articulate myself better. But there's always something there to explore, but I can't put it in a definitive answer all the time.
Yeah.
For what ego is, or what Ego Ale means, or my goals with it all the time, because maybe it is that I just explore it and the answer will show up later.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, that's kind of words are extremely powerful, but they really, like we were saying earlier, can only do so much justice in scratching the surface of concepts that transcend language. And so sometimes even in this, especially in the context of like creativity and art in particular, using words in a way that are more open to interpretation or even conceptually ambiguous, that can play a role in there. And I feel like Ego Ale, you don't need to spell out what that means for you or each individual that comes through and you feature in this.
Yeah, it'll like present itself.
Right.
Like you'll be able to see it through us.
Yeah.
Exploring that.
Yeah.
You'll be able to kind of pinpoint things about them or their character.
Yeah,
And
it allows the audience to come in with their own interpretation of the ego, because if you do spell that out, you kind of can risk your definition that you spelled out not aligning with so many others to where they're like, oh, well, this isn't how I think about ego, so I'm not going to watch this. You know, like it can benefit you to not spell it out.
Yeah.
But it would be a creative choice, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I think with like that and like documentary and thinking about ego ale, I came to it through the philosophy of essay film. Because essay film is a form of documentary. So I think with that, I think one thing that comes up is the camera pen quote, that you're essentially like God in a way, that you are the person who is, you're showing what you see, like you are the person behind the camera.
Yeah.
So you're writing what the audience is viewing. So in a way, I'm showing them a certain thing that is still like a reality, but also maybe at some point I can't fully encompass a person through my camera. But
yeah.
I think
never can. You can never capture the full truth of a person.
Yeah.
They can't spell it out. People are super complicated.
Yeah.
When you start digging into it like that.
And all the subconscious things about them that they don't even acknowledge or realize.
Yeah.
And just awareness, back to awareness, I guess, of trying to figure out life and people and yourself.
Yeah. So this was the question I was starting, and then I wanted to stay in this territory, but now we can go past the photography, videography, film.
Yeah.
You have other creative outlets. You mentioned painting, drawing, and music. Particularly, you play guitar, right? Mm-hmm. Do you do those a lot, or is there one of those that you are most fascinated with?
Since growing up, art, like painting and drawing, has always been like my thing. Mm-hmm. So that's something I had done and gotten really good at. And then in college, when I decided to not take the route of studying psychology and art in tandem, and then I switched to filmmaking. When I started picking up the camera more, I stopped drawing. And I kind of hate that I am not like as focused on it as I once was. But recently, and I guess for the past couple years, I started doing more paintings, but definitely not as much as I had done before. But now I keep a sketchbook in my purse all the time, and I'll be sketching a lot more. I think with what I guess I'm realizing I've always focused on with painting and drawing is also people. Do a lot of like portraiture stuff, or it's just kind of like something I've done, like figure drawing, just being able to look at a picture of someone's face and just kind of replicate that, or just still life drawing sometimes. Is
your goal like kind of realism, capturing it as realistically as you can draw it?
I think, yeah. Realism, it hasn't always been realism, because it used to be somewhat abstract in a way, or I think always basing my stuff out of real life.
Airplane.
Hold for sound.
We don't have to.
I'm kidding. I just talking about
do not have to wait for it.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I've been trying to get back to guitar recently as well, and just music. I have Ableton, so trying to make a couple more beats recently, and that's something I picked up over the last couple of years, I had made like one beat ever. And then now I'm like, okay, well, I have more time to just focus on these other creative endeavors that I've always wanted to do and been interested in. So
Do you see yourself getting into making music?
I've always wanted to. I've really always wanted to. And
what role do you want to play in that?
I want to be a singer. No, I was kidding.
Do you?
No, I do. I've always wanted to be a singer, and I think I'm like good. My issue is stage fright. And just being like, even in situations like these, it's like a little uncomfortable to have like, or just like being like, oh, it's about me, you know, because I've always been the person who puts like everyone else before myself. Yeah. So when it's time to focus on me, it makes me a little uncomfortable.
We're like in reverse roles. I feel like I've been very narcissistic with a lot of my work to where it's like, get these cameras on me. Let's dissect me. And part of the motion for this podcast is like, I should probably flex my listening muscle and figure out how to listen to people better and feature them. Yeah. And I feel like my first podcast I recorded with my brother, like the first half of it was a pretty good, honest attempt at extract. And he's also someone who's just not talkative, like doesn't have a lot to say. He almost kind of,
I can be like that.
Yeah. He's almost a little bit, maybe even perturbed by questions. Like, I don't know what you want me to say. Let me just talk in circles for a second and move on. And so then it was that. And then like the back hour is me going on like 30-minute uninterrupted rants. Oh yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, a little embarrassed, but you know, this is it. This is the third one, and I feel like I'm improving each one.
Oh, cool. Nice. Yeah.
My goal with this one was to use filler words like like, and less. I know I definitely did it.
I do that.
But I do feel like I decreased a pretty significant percentage from the last one. Yeah. Yeah.
That's good. I'm going to listen back to this and catch myself and punch myself in the face for my words.
No, I actually don't feel like you were doing it very much. I feel like you're a very calm and articulate speaker.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm not.
Yeah. I think your nervousness is definitely disproportionate to any reason to be nervous about like performance or anything like that.
Yeah. Or even just talking about like singing and being in front of the camera. It always feels awkward for me being in front of the camera, but then I can give someone else the advice, oh, don't worry, like you look great, just do this. And then I know it, but then when I'm there, then it just feels different. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, how would you rate your first podcast experience?
This is 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. Wow. You heard it here.
With a great person.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Great person. Look at that. The reviews are in. Well, thank you so much. Yeah. I had a really great time talking to you. I'll have to do it again sometime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fist bump. Yep. Cool. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next week. I don't know how these are going to get released, so I'm just guessing. I'm probably going to do one a week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks again.
Thank you.